To close. Oh, scared the G's. Okay, so we share screen, share entire screen. Go to Google Slides. We hit slideshow. Go up here. Overlay. Okay. Oops. Is it? Okay. Well, let's hope it's right. Okay. Hello, I am Eric Morrison, and today I'm going to be talking about cholera and its history and how it has impacted the world around us, and going into some policies for some countries. So, first things first, cholera has been responsible for 7 pandemics worldwide, which seems like a lot. It is a lot. And some things to know about cholera: it's gram negative. It's rod, as you can see in the picture. It has a rod shape, and majority of the time, it is in poor, like not poor countries. It's not a good choice of words, but basically, it's like poor hygiene. Poor hygiene would be the right way to say it. So let's look at the problem. With cholera, this map shows all of the different outbreaks of it, and the number of cholera cases per country. So as you can see, in the early 1950s and 1960s, seemed really concentrated, things like that. But it was around the world. It's just when they started collecting data, we have started seeing a spread of it, and the containment's been a problem. So first things first with containment. With cholera, a lot of the times someone, gets cholera, it goes into their intestines and everything, destroys it. It gives them watery diarrhea. They then, you know, poop it out. Then with all that watery diarrhea, has all that cholera in it, it goes back into the water supply or wherever, back into the environment, can then now infect someone else. So then when you try to contain it, it's hard to contain it because then you got to figure out the water flow and everything and how basically everything goes downhill. So then you're looking at the spread now. So with the spread, if you have an isolated incident, say up in the mountains, all of a sudden they get cholera, they don't properly contain it and dispose of it, it now spreads down the mountain in like a trickle down effect. So then that brings us to the third problem, which is treatment. So then how do you treat um, fecal matter that is contaminated with cholera so then that way no one else gets um, infected? And so that's the big thing. So now with that being said, the current struggles. So with these three being in place, what has been seen with a lot of countries is that when they're uh, underdeveloped and uneducated masses, a lot of the times you'll have people where they'll just throw their trash wherever, and it's just because they don't know what it does. A popular thing is, like, I was just in Panama for a research opportunity. They would throw glass bottles. They would just toss them out. They would just, finish drinking them and then just slam them on the ground, throw them down the little like cliffside if there's a cliffside onto a street and stuff. And a lot of the times when I asked my professor, he just said it's because no one knows. No one knows what happens when you're throwing glass down there. They just think, oh, I don't see it anymore. It's not affecting me. And so that's the same thing with cholera. When someone gets it and then they pass it, and then they, assuming they survive and stuff, they think, oh, no big deal. It's gone. I survived it. No one cares. Which isn't the case because it goes downhill to, could be their family that's downhill or another family that's downhill. So it's one of those things where what if all of a sudden you have a baker downstream, you know, so say you're the carpenter of the village. You get cholera, okay, houses don't get built. All of a sudden, the baker gets cholera. Well, Now no one's getting bread, no one's getting food. Now people are starving. So it's this whole trickle down effect, and it's one of those things to where no one sees the like current problem or how to deal with it, or like what can happen when things go like that. So that's the current struggle, is to try to get populations that are constantly getting cholera outbreaks in today's age, and then just in general, because war torn countries are notorious for having struggles with cholera, as we will look in our past lessons. So, back when the United States, so we're going to go a little bit from the right to left here. So, past lessons. So, we're looking back at America's last time we had a major cholera uh, pandemic or epidemic in our country was right after our Civil War, which is basically um, in the 1800s. It was just, you would think you'd see cholera maybe during the war and stuff, but for whatever reason, it happened after the war. And so that was kind of a trip thing. Um, but basically, it was everyone was coming home. Everyone that was currently fighting and stuff like that, they're coming home. They're ready to just pass out and be done, kind of a thing. So then no one's caring about nothing. No one's caring about hygiene. And so then all of a sudden, all it takes is one person to have cholera. Boom, spreads like wildfire. Everyone's coming back. Everyone's spreading it back to where they came from, um, and things like that. So it just caused mass to just like spread. So that's some past lessons of just basically when you get a bunch of people in a small place, someone gets cholera, then they all get cholera, then they can all bring it back to their towns and villages or cities or anything like that, and then just it's like snowball effect and stuff. So current fixes we have today, we have cell phones, we got World Health organizations that are on top of it of tracking the spreads and trying to contain them by knowing exactly where it started and where it's gone. And through a lot of these things, there has been some problems for different strains of cholera. You have to give them different time windows. And so a common time window is around like 3 days, 3 to 4 days. But there's been studies that have shown that having 5 days actually increases the amount that we can track back to with better rates of containment and stuff. So that goes a little bit more into my paper that I was writing, stuff like that. There's like just a little blurb on it and stuff from one of the papers I wrote, not wrote, read. And so, yeah, that was interesting. So it's just a lot of different way things like interact with each other. Then you got the product feature of cholera. So that's basically just talking about like the watery diarrhea, how it spreads, um, and then the illness that it causes in the individual. Okay. So then look at the next steps. This is talking about your waste treatment. So this is making sure that you contain the waste that is positive for cholera, and that you treat it properly and make sure that it can't spread anywhere else. And then proper education goes back over um, educating individuals in rural towns and villages about proper etiquette if you do have a sickness and how to contain it, and so that way it doesn't spread to anyone else. And then this could also spread into just like daily life of other things and things of that nature. But that's the first two. And then lastly, guidelines is updating guidelines to make sure that they are the best possible versions. So currently, uh, Zambia is working on uh, their fecal management system, and so they're doing a complete overhaul and everything, and going through all that. And then South Sudan is currently going through a civil war, but they just had a ceasefire this last year, and I don't know how long if it's still going on or not. But I know when the ceasefire did happen, a lot of countries were sending aid, to facilitate their waste management systems and rebuild them and properly support them for the new age. And so then that way they don't break down because they are currently in a cholera pandemic, if I'm not mistaken. And so that's some things, some guidelines that other countries are doing to help benefit their people as a whole. And that is my talk. And stop